Thoughts are racing, spinning fast. Ideas flow, but never last. Waves of wonder, thoughts untamed. Nothing ever stays the same. Rambling on, no straight lines. Welcome to my busy mind. Questions, answers, here they go. Digging deeper, let's start the show.
Hi, welcome back to Ramblings of a Busy Mind, and we are at episode 13. And I'm really happy to have Robert Tetero with me. Tetero. And I
You're
did
doing
it
good.
again.
Hetero,
Tetero.
hetero.
How is the original
In
is
Dutch, it's
Dutch?
Dutch.
So it would be Tetero.
Tetero.
Tetero. Okay,
Tetero.
I should do that because being German, I should be able to pronounce that correctly. And Robert is a master teacher, a soul alignment, stress and burnout recovery and prevention, breathing breath practitioner, and shamanic guide and teacher. I had to read that up. You said so much.
Yeah.
Welcome, Robert. And I'm happy to have you here with me. And yeah, if you want to put anything else to that introduction, please go ahead and introduce yourself.
Thank you, Natasha, for having me. No, I have nothing to add. I consider myself a guide rather than a coach.
Mhm.
I always envision a coach standing on the sideline, cheering you on, which you sort of do, but I prefer, guiding people,
Yeah.
just showing them different possibilities and
The hand in the
giving
back
them
and
new insights.
the gentle hand guiding. That's the same for me. It's like I'm not the one who puts you into that place and says you have to be like this. Go, 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 go. No, it's more like what you think and how do you think and
Yeah, exactly.
guiding. Yeah. You have a very interesting background. So from your nationality and living almost all over the world, correct?
Yeah,
And
that's
now you're
correct.
in Belgium,
In Holland,
Holland.
actually.
But you have
Yeah,
lived in all kinds of.
I've lived in all the major European cities, in Athens, in Brussels, in Paris, you name it. And 4 years in India as well, which was an amazing experience. So, and I'm still traveling. I'm just a world citizen and a world traveler.
When you look at the world, stress levels are high in professional settings anyway, but do you find the way that people, different nationalities, cope with stress? Do you find there's differences?
That's a good question, actually, because stress is just universal. Why are we why are we stressing so much
I
on
don't
this
know.
planet? You know? Is it by design? Are we made to stress?
No, I don't think so. I think it's the setup that we're put into because kids don't know stress per se, I'd say. Their nature is
Mhm.
just explore and enjoy. When then we start school and we are put into expectations and people want something from us and we're trying to fulfill the expectation and that's where the stress comes in, I
Right,
would say.
right. Yeah, so that's sort of what I mean when I say by design, because you sort of are pushed into a system, and then you have to integrate. You have to do what your social conditioning, your religious conditioning, your familiar, family conditioning. You're born into a whole set of rules that you have to abide by. And my God, if I think it back at my school days, I couldn't stand it. I really could not stand it. And I did really poorly at school. However, I did almost graduate from university by a point 0.5 uh, away from a cum laude.
Oh,
I think, yeah, I think it was just to prove to myself that I wasn't entirely stupid.
well, I went to finish my German Abitur because mostly one of the reasons was that my father said, "You're not going to do it anyway." He
Uh-huh.
wanted to put me
Yeah.
into a vocational training, and I said, no, I'm gonna finish school. And then I pulled through, and then I went on to university, and did my business diploma. And the fun part is my business diploma these days would be a bachelor, but
Right.
I had like all average no like all average grades, but in genetics and Danish.
In what? Dentistry?
Danish, the
Oh, Danish.
language,
Oh, oh yeah, yeah,
Danish,
yeah, yeah.
and because I had fun in those language, like those were the most favorite classes that I had, and yeah,
Yeah.
so yeah, it was interesting to see that, and I find these days like the German system in my time was so strict that you had only those limited choices. You had to go this branch or that branch. You had not the possibility to swap classes. And I find
That's
that here
correct.
in Canada, when there's kids coming to Canada from Germany, a lot of them are way more successful because they have a different system and they can pick the classes that they need.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Well, I think the curriculum in German schools is much higher than most European schools.
It's very strict and it's very competitive.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And
And
that's not always the best, I'd say.
right. And do you know that my father had the genius when we lived in India after I had been put on a American school, then to a British school, then one day to a British Indian school, a local Indian school, which was which was hell. I went there one day and I came back crying and said, I am not going there anymore. So finally, he had the idea of putting me in a German school in India where I learned German. And little did I know that 40 years later, I'd be using it on a daily basis because one of my biggest networks is in Germany.
I
And
didn't know
I
you speak
studied it.
German. So we
Yeah.
could have the
Uh,
discussion all in German.
Yeah, we could. And then, subtitle it.
No. I'd rather subtitle in German.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. But
No, it's
I studied in Heidelberg. I lived in Düsseldorf. I had my first job in Germany. I recorded my CD in Berlin. And I've been giving trainings all over Germany. Germany has
cool.
given me so much. It's unbelievable.
Yeah.
I could have
See?
never imagined.
But it's interesting how you find your places that you resonate with, right?
Yeah.
I haven't been back to Germany since 2019. I used to travel twice a year, because my company that I have here has German clients. So I
Okay.
could go back and forth and meet the clients there, and but the th same thing, teaching, like all my business language or my language right now, the professional language is in English. So I tried to explain to somebody something in German yesterday. It was so funny because I couldn't find the German words.
I think I'll do better than you right now because I'll let.
Probably I'll let you translate my stuff. Which, on the other hand, is also funny because I was the editor for all of our books that we did here in English. Me speaking English as a second language, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Um, but you just have a different understanding for the language.
yeah,
It's not your usual. That's the fun part in it, right? You're
yeah.
homeschooling your kid, right?
Yeah, that's correct.
And
Yeah.
what was your decision for that?
Well, again, first of all, I just didn't. Really honestly, and I'm sure there are really great teachers out there, not to criticize them, but it's like the system.
Mm,
And they're just not prepared to these really highly evolved souls that are incarnating at this time. It's really unbelievable. I call them earth angels, and I write about them in my book. They're so young, but they're so highly intelligent. And the schools are just not equipped,
hmm
to be able to teach these kids. So intuitively, I said, I want to, with my wife, let's homeschool. But that's a difficult decision to make because every step of the way, there are moments where you're doubting,
hmm
well, he's always home. He's
hmm
always with us.
hmm
We've got our work. He needs a schedule. And then you have to really revert to your intuition constantly come back to, your heart-centered, purpose-driven soul alignment. Is like, no, no, trust that you're doing the right thing. And now it's already paying off because everybody around us is going, oh wow, your child is still so in his natural state. You know, he's brilliant.
Mm.
He'll be sitting at the other end of the table, talking the whole evening while we're having dinner with friends, talking with some adult for the whole evening. You know, it's like, wow, I wonder what they're talking about. So later I go and ask, and it's unbelievable. He has so
Yeah.
much to talk about, and he's very curious, always asking questions.
I see that in friends' kids here that the school system diminishes the light because they're not allowed to explore, they're not allowed to go and encourage their own curiosity. They're
Hmm.
put in that box that they have to follow. And I know from myself, as I was a kid in school, that being kept in that box put a lot of stress, put a lot
Yeah,
of anxiety, and then you have that you don't fit into the system or into the
right.
school class, into the school setting, social setting, then you get bullied, and then you have the next step coming up
Yeah,
that like I understand the homeschooling part quite a bit. I'm not sure if I could do it if I had kids. But it's a huge commitment on your side.
it is. It is. But once once you're over the first part and you map out a course, then you're good. It's really natural. It's actually very, very easy. It really is. And it isn't even to the degree that we have to keep him busy
Mm,
and entertain him. No, because he's so independent, he'll just sit down by himself in a corner and start drawing
mm,
the first 2, 3 hours in the morning. Just let him draw. I'll take him out and we'll go, play some soccer outside or do whatever. So he's also part of what a homeschooling community called the Light Tribe in Utrecht in the center of the Netherlands. So we have to drive a long way, about 60 kilometers, but it's worth it. And the way they are taught there is just unbelievable. I have a whole box here with all the tuning forks. Oh, I don't know if you can see it.
gotta put it
Oh,
in front
yeah.
of your nose.
Oh, in front of my nose. Yeah, you're right. Yeah, a box of all the tuning forks
Yeah.
of all the chakras.
Mm,
So he comes home from a day there at the Light Tribe. And he said, Dad, I'm going to do a healing on you. And it's magnificent. You walk around right now. I did have some pain in my foot. So he says, okay, take off your shoes. And then he starts, treating me there. And then he asks me to walk again. And sure enough, if you're a little bit sensitive to energy, which I am, but you definitely feel the difference. So he's already at that level, understanding energy, that it's all about energy in the world and maintaining your health and the most amazing things that they're doing there. They'll take all different kinds of materials so they can feel it, they can smell it, they'll burn it and see what happens to a material.
mm.
Wonderful, really
So
wonderful.
it's an out of the box approach, which is
Yeah,
really
they
good.
go into the forest and they go tracking and they'll find, all different animal tracks and droppings and be able to distinguish what animal, you know, was passing by there. It's really amazing. Very, very good.
Nice. It comes closest to the Waldorfschule or Montessori Schule that we had in Germany, right? Where
Yeah,
where
yeah,
kids that were, and I know friends of mine who had kids that were challenged with the normal system thrived in those schools, and they finished schools, and even so, they were often belittled in Germany
yeah,
system-wise.
yeah,
They because higher standards and the competitiveness that you are trained into when you go into a normal school in Germany. And what is normal? That's the other part. Like in the considered normal school, um, wouldn't allow those kids to thrive.
yeah,
It would
exactly.
put them in a system that they had to be in that box, and if you didn't fit, you would be kicked out, or you would be smashed to pieces until you fit into the box, right?
Yeah, yeah, exactly. I have one more really amazing example. My oldest, he's 28 now, but when he went to kindergarten, in the second year, apparently, he had to be in the same kindergarten with the same teacher for 2 consecutive years. And all of a sudden, the teacher calls me up and she was really angry because she says, like, your child is disturbing everybody else,
Mm.
and he's lazy and he's not helping when we finish playing with the toys. He's never helping to clean up. And she wanted to put him in the box of having ADHD, attention deficit disorder, right? And I'm like, no, no, we're not going there. And I told her, I said, what do you expect from a child that has to sit in the same circle for another year, listen to the same stories, sing the same songs? Of course, he's not being challenged. So you need to get him to do something else. And then about him being lazy, not doing anything. Yeah, well, they have everybody throw all the stuff in the big box, and he's just standing there watching them all. And I said, I tell you why he's standing there watching them all. Because they're making a bloody mess cleaning up. Watch and let him, and just wait and watch what he'll do. And in fact, he'll go back in the box and start putting things exactly the way they were when they started playing.
Mm-hmm.
That's the the aesthetics that he already had as a young child. He
Yep.
wanted everything in a beautiful order.
Yeah. And how often do we cut people out? Not now, but system wise, or people like society wise. How often are people cut out that don't fit the norm? And they don't get the opportunity to show their light, to shine their light, to be bright and yes, not conform, but unique and wonderful in their own way, instead
Yeah,
of being put in that place where you don't fit in, right?
correct. And I hope, I don't really know, but I'm sure, let's put it this way, I'm sure it is changing because we do have to evolve and to grow. It is the sign of the times where where faced with difficulties of how to deal with, high intelligence kids, they're going to have to come up with another way of instructing and giving them the freedom to develop.
Yep. Yeah,
So,
true. True. Um, you yourself do work with burnout and stress. Do you work with a certain age group, or is it anybody? Or tell me a little bit about your work.
well, for the past 35 years, I have, anybody that comes knocking on my door is welcome. I've never really turned anybody away. Never. And everybody that has come to me over the course of these 35 years, they've always come to me by word of mouth. So I didn't even have to make a sales pitch. They knew why they were coming to me, or they first called. So I had uh, sort of a discovery call with them so that I could get a global idea of where they are and what their challenges are. So in that sense, I am and I was a total success. Um, I am being a lot more critical now because I notice that, well, when you're attracting everybody, well, not everybody is motivated to really give their 200%, while I'm out there really giving my 500%. I always give more than I promise, which is good. But I'm not going to sit there doing the work for the others. And so I've been a little more directing my, you know, ideal clients as uh, entrepreneurs and business owners,
Mm.
because they are motivated. They, for them, it's normal to have a coach,
Mm.
right? To invest, and
Mm.
they want results, and
Mm.
they want quick results.
Mm.
And I like that kind of a mentality. It's
And
really great.
I find lasting results don't come when you have the work done for you. You have to do the learning yourself. So
Yeah,
that's why I work with you, but I don't work for you because
right. Exactly.
otherwise it's just another patch on to whatever's going on, and it's not actually healing work because that's only like healing can only come from yourself, not from anybody else, I
That's
find.
correct.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. So
absolutely.
you work with different modalities, or how do you work? Because I know we never talked about the way you work. You know that I work with singing bowls, but what do you do? I'm curious.
My opening, my own personal awakening came through shamanism.
Hmm.
And although shamanism isn't really an official word, actually, it was just a word that anthropologists came up with to sort of be able to study, the native peoples.
Hmm.
So, but so that people understand somewhat where I'm coming from, it was the shamanic path, and I ended up apprenticing with a Native American and meeting so many women and men from different tribes that shared their knowledge with me because I spent a lot of time in the southwest of the United States when I had sort of enough of the world and needed to figure out what I was meant to do here. I just dropped everything, sold all my things, bought a plane ticket to the States, and I promised never to come back until I figured out, where I came from, what I was supposed to be meant to be doing here, and where would I go if I would drop the body.
Hmm.
So, but the shamanic path is certainly not for everybody because it was like a real confrontation with my ego, and in order to really to get into that shamanic understanding, I would just say, I needed to let go of everything I thought I was and the world is, and just start all over. And so it was just a lot of listening, not talking so much, but just listening and observing, being out in nature a lot. And my God, nature is such an incredible teacher.
Hmm.
It really is. And we take it for granted and we're walking around, but do we, what do we really absorb when we're really looking at the canyon walls or a flower? What is it you're observing? The color, the fragrance, the size, how is it affecting you? But we just walk by, oh, what a beautiful flower, and that's just about it. Maybe we'll still pick up the fragrance, but there's so much more.
Yeah.
But it wasn't until I discovered breath work, I call it conscious energy breathing, where it was the first time that I knew in my life what I wanted to be doing. Because in my first session, I saw my whole life just go by as a film in front of my eyes. I
Hmm.
saw my whole life pass me by. And I recapitulated my life. I saw all the different experiences that I had and the certain decisions that I made on the basis of certain experiences that I wasn't even aware of that I had made. Unbelievable. And for the first time in my life, I understood why I was the way I had become. It
Hmm.
wasn't who I was, it was who I had become by the way I was conditioned. So now I was free to completely uh, start forging my own life, my own values, my own innate compass, and follow my own guidance system. That was an awakening. But for the first time in my life, it was like, okay, now this is a medium ship that I could work with people with, So everybody that comes to me, usually, there are exceptions, but I usually start with doing breathwork sessions with them because it really works in a wonderful way in that it alleviates all the blockages and the stress and the anxiety and the worries that we're holding in our body, things that we're not even aware of anymore. So, and it's such a simple and gentle and effective tool. And although the breathing itself is very easy, but I do warn people that if you do breath work or conscious energy breathing, to really find somebody that is, you know, well versed in it, that he knows what they're doing, because yes, it can bring up a lot of things, but
Mm,
then what? You need
mm.
somebody that knows how to guide you through that process. But it really brings into alignment the physical, the emotional, the mental, and even the spiritual, everything that's going on in the spiritual realm. It brings it completely into alignment. And what that means is, and that's why I'm saying purpose driven soul alignment. All of a sudden, it's like you're connecting with Source, and Source is in you. We are part of Source.
I find it so interesting. When I trained to be a teacher for therapeutic touch, we looked at all the material that had we used to learn therapeutic touch in the beginning, and part of that was that they always talked about centering and grounding in one part. Like it was not centering and grounding; it was always centering and you center and ground at the same time, and nobody could explain that really. And then my business partner and friend Michelle Greenwell and I, we wrote a different workbook, which was called Raising Bioenergetic Awareness. And first of that was we took centering and grounding apart, and we found out that when you take a breath in, you're centering because you breathe into your center, you bring yourself back to the center, you pick up all the pieces that are frazzled outside, and you come to center, and then you breathe out, and that's your grounding if you direct it into your feet. And I use that since then when I do any energy healing. When I start, I put my hands on and I have people breathe into their center and then out of their feet. And within 3 breaths, the shoulders drop.
Right.
It's so easy
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
come to yourself, to be present and to get out of that hyperventilation or not breathing at all. And then all of a
Right.
sudden, everything is clear, right? Because you get enough oxygen. It's a physical reaction too. You get enough oxygen and your breathing slows down and you're not tight anymore. You're letting go. But most times you don't see that really in people. Like when I look at the other modalities that we trained in and that people started working, and over the last it changed a bit over the last 10 years, but when we started in touch for health, therapeutic touch or whatever, um it was never taken to the part that you take it into single parts and you make it habit to do that first and really focus and intent and then start your work, because what happens then, you and your healing partner, as we call it in therapeutic touch, you all of a sudden at the same plateau. You're starting at the same level. You are connected and then
Right.
you can go off, which makes the healing part or the working part way easier because you are connected and it just allows to flow. While before it's just I do the healing and you sit there, right? Basically, that was the idea. And that's not working with each other. That's working
Right.
for
Exactly.
somebody, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And then
I've
you're
never,
actually tuning in to the person.
yeah, yeah. I've never done a real breath work course as you do it. I only do a little bit of like breathing, paying attention to my breath and making people aware that they're not breathing when they're in stress.
Mhm.
It would be really
Right.
interesting to see what comes up. I'm not sure how easy that would be for me because I know I hold quite a bit and I know I hold it in my jaw. So all my tension is in my jaw. Anything that
Okay.
goes on
Okay.
is jaw and neck, right? To the point that I catch myself then sitting like this and I can't even relax the neck.
Uh,
But what I also learned is like usually what you do then is you stretch and you go like the extreme way and but gentle is so much easier. So if you start to sway a little bit and let the muscles experience what it feels like not to be holding tight, all of a sudden it loosens up, right? There's so many things that came the last few years that especially last year was quite a few insights where, as you said, when you all of a sudden realize how far you've come and what you left behind and where you're moving to. But the biggest part for me was to see that the trust in myself and the trust that
right.
everything will be okay, not fretting about things that I might not be able to change, but just the innate trust that whatever is happening, I can deal with it in one way or the other, right? And that took quite a bit out of my stress situation. And I only get these days, I only get really in stress if there's a situation that I don't know how to handle.
Mm-hmm.
which is seldom, right? And then somebody said in one of the courses, "What's your fear?" It was about a course about tools and things. Like it was a technical course on moving forward and becoming more the entrepreneur or solopreneur that you are. And one of the questions was, "What is your fear?" And I said, "I cannot say. I have no fear. I have challenges, yes, but I have no fear of them. There's nothing really that I could say right now that I fear."
Yeah.
It's interesting to see that.
Somebody asked me that same question, and nothing really came up until our conversation was over. And a little later in the evening, I was like, well, actually, yeah, I have fear of heights. But then
Good
again,
one. Me too. No, mine is fear of falling. I'm okay with heights, but I fear falling. So I can get up everywhere, but I might not get down.
right. But again, what I say is that any kind of fear, we can actually reduce it back to the fear of death, the fear of
Mm,
dying.
I don't know. No, I don't know. I would say no, but that's always never say never. Um, for me, the thought of dying, if it would happen today, it's not the fear of death, it's the fear of a prolonged illness or prolonged pain more than
Right.
that would be more worrying for me than that it's over today,
Hmm.
right?
Yeah.
So yeah, it's interesting when you start
Well,
thinking about the things that you say, and then all of a sudden you catch yourself like, "Oops, it's not the way that I thought."
well, death is the unknown, and and when I'm working with people and they have a particular fear, I keep asking the question, well, okay, so what if? What if? Well, I'm afraid of losing my job. Well, then what? Well, yeah, then I won't be able to get, provide for my family. Well, then what? Well, then what? Well, how are we supposed to still maintain our standard of living? And then what? Well, I don't know. I might lose my wife and my kids. All right. And then what? Well, they get slightly irritated. I say, well, I'll end up under a bridge, and then what? What if you end up under a bridge without a job, no more money, and then what? Well, I don't know. I might get sick. And what if you get sick? Well, I might die. I said, well, there you go. So, I keep asking and asking and asking and bring them down to the very, very deepest fear is ultimately the fear of the unknown, which is the moment where we pass over and have no clue what we are going to go through. Even, your angst for the pain you might experience during, your passing over. But that's the way I help people sort of bring fear into perspective. It says,
Mm,
don't feed fear with fear, but understand where it's coming from. And it's usually all about the unknown.
hmm
And I put the unknown literally, uh, uh, I connect the unknown literally with our birth when we
hmm
went from the known into the unknown,
hmm
and where most of us suffered trauma, even under the best circumstances. If your birth, they say, was pretty normal, it's pretty intense experience.
hmm
You know, if you were having a wonderful time, you were in some symbiosis with your mother, you didn't have to chew your food, 24 hours womb service, right? It was nice and warm in there, and then came the the moment where you're pressed through this narrow canal, you know, and my God, the intensity of that. And then if the first people that touched you and delivered you hung you upside down, cut your umbilical cord, you're dying because the lungs are still full of the amniotic fluid.
Yeah.
So that's where your breath is already ruined in the first
Mm,
moments of your birth. And you're choking.
yeah.
You see that if you look at birth pictures. And I've also had the blessing of being able to uh, witness was a couple of women giving birth, including my own wife. But that's intense. So at a very deep subconscious level, we have we made this pre-verbal decision not to trust people ever again.
Mm.
We're not going there, oh wow, they're, welcoming me into the world. No, this is the first time that you've experienced physical abuse.
Yeah.
And that's where a lot of our struggles come from, and the fear of the unknown. I mean, my father, my whole life, he was like, oh, you always have to have some money. You need to put some money away because you never know what can happen. Right? Where does that come from? Why are we so fixated on, our stability? We say in Dutch, huisje, boompje, beestje. Your house, your tree, and your little animals, your household pets, you know? And it's just a sense of false security because, you just need one earthquake and, well, everything's gone.
I know I had that block put in me with my mom. My mom always said you have to be financially stable. And I know for her it came from being divorced with two little kids, having to work and having to finance everything herself. And I know where it came from, but at the same time it installed such a big block, and it came always, her saying that always came when I was trying to move into a different direction, intuitively or whatever. But as soon as I tried to step out of that box of you have a fixed job and whatever, I got that sentence, you have to be financially stable, and it shut me down.
Right, exactly. Yeah,
And when I finally realized that, I talked to her about it, and I said to her, I said, I know where it comes from and I know you mean well, but you saying that always keeps me back. So she said, then jump. And she's never said it again.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
But
So
it's
those are,
interesting how so little things can hold you back the rest of your life, right?
yeah, exactly, exactly. Somewhere along the line, I made the decision that I would have to do it all alone in this world.
Mm-hmm.
And you know how that affected. And when I found out that I had made this pre-verbal unconscious decision, I had to laugh so loud for the ridiculousness of it, but cried so sobbed my way through that session with the realization how it influenced my whole life.
Yep. Yeah, and that it
And
is
think about it. People would come up to me and always offer me help, but I would always say, "No, it's okay. I can do it. I can do
my
it alone."
brother's like that. My brother cannot, he especially not when it's family. Like he's like these days it's better, but when he was very young, he like I would come, I had my Ayurvedic training. I knew with the singing bowls and with the oil massages I could help him with his headache. What does he do? He goes and says, "No."
Yeah,
I'm
yeah,
like, okay, then I don't. Or maybe was the best answer that I could get. So I said, no, I'll step away. And to this day, one of the lessons that I learned with him, I offer twice and then I step away. It's your journey, it's not mine. If you don't come, I don't have to go pester you that I can help you. I'm
right.
here to help. I made the offer. It's up to you to step up. Right. But I realized too, I have a hard time. I had a hard time, not anymore. I had a hard time asking for help. I was the first to offer help, but I
Right.
never
Me
felt
too.
comfortable to ask for help. Right.
Yeah,
And it could be
yeah,
so easy.
yeah. So what I tell everybody, including myself, just say yes.
Yeah,
Just say yes.
yeah.
We're having dinner here, and it's some of the people, some of our guests, hey, can I help? Do the dishes or whatever. And sometimes I'll say, no, it's all right. They're our guests. So, but my wife Carlina would immediately make me aware that I was, rejecting somebody that wanted to help. And I said, why did you just say no again? Somebody is offering you to help. I'm like, oh yeah, you're right. Because you're also taking away their joy of
Hmm.
wanting to help.
Hmm. I hear you. I hear. And then there's another part in that for me where I say there's some things that I'd rather do myself because I know then I don't have to do them twice
Yeah,
because
yeah, yeah,
there's some issues. So the way you word it when you reject somebody is also part of that.
yeah.
I know I had a friend here. coming to chat with me, and he sat down. He said, "Let's do your dishes." I said, "No." I said, "Why don't you take my help?" I said, "Because I want to talk to you and I don't want to do dishes." Different reason. It's not that I couldn't accept
Yeah,
him do my dishes, but the point was that at that moment it was more important for me to sit with him and have the discussion and focus on him and not on my dishes, right?
yeah. Well,
So
and then sometimes I will actually say no, and then I will add because I know you're not going to do it the way I would want it.
exactly, that's the point.
I do tell
My
them. I do
my
tell them.
standards.
Yeah, 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 yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, no, but it's so interesting the interaction between people when you start talking to people. And I had we had a discussion at one of the last summits about kids where I realized I was triggered by you having a different opinion, but in the end it came back to me not voicing it correctly, what I meant.
I
But
think I remember. Yeah.
the first part of that for me was
Oh,
I felt rejected, and then I go back and I look at it and I'm like, yeah, no, you said it not in the right way that it could be understood. And that taught me that my brain sometimes works that I'm 5 sentences ahead, right? So I say something that might not be heard from somebody else because I didn't voice it out the correct way. I in my head I said it, but I didn't. And that's also time when I'm not myself, when I'm stressed, when I'm running crazy and 15 miles a minute.
yeah,
While
yeah,
if I take the time to sit down and voice what I mean or realize right away it's not correctly said, and then realize is
right,
it important to change it or not, and I don't feel offended, right?
right.
Or rejected. But it's so
Yeah,
interesting when you start getting into that place where you can realize that. Because before I would have never ever gotten like close to you or having a discussion or being vulnerable and open about that because I was in a place where I had to keep myself safe. So somebody who rejected me, they didn't mean well. And these days I can go and say, okay, this is my part in the whole action and it's mine, it's not his. So take myself back and go like, yeah, you reacted that way, but it's not because he offended you, it's because you didn't do right. And that's an
yeah,
interesting part and a really big part of growing to get to the point to realize where is your part in whatever happens to you, right?
yeah,
And not thinking that somebody else is that way because you think he's that way.
yeah. And the first step is to become aware that that's going on, but that's pretty easy when I'm triggered about something, then that's my thing. You know, one of my teachers always said, any kind of upset is your setup. What did you specifically do to set yourself up
That's
to
cool.
upset yourself? And I love that. So every time I'm triggered about anything at all, it's like, okay, wait a minute, take it back home and just take a step back and look at it for a moment. So you create a gap between what comes in and what's gonna come out, and then just ask the question, right? So to keep the conversation open and just ask, wait a minute, did you understand it correctly? Maybe I didn't this or that, you know, because I always say it's never about right or wrong, but again, like you said, it's about understanding, you
Where's the other
know,
person?
what the other person wants to
Yeah.
convey, and it might not always be in the right words. And I love that. I always say, is there something as being able to observe the absolute?
No.
Like, how do I know that when you're saying something, that I'm interpreting it in the way that you mean to be saying it? Or how do I know that you're not saying something, but meaning something different,
Yeah.
or that I am interpreting in the way that I like to interpret it? So, is there something as being able to observe the absolute? I actually say yes.
I try to when I have a conversation with somebody that I have challenges with or where I know there's an argument happening, I try to reflect on what I heard, what they said. So with the sentence, I heard from what you said, this and
Right,
this, right? In
right.
order to really comprehend, did I hear it right? Do they understand what I understood?
Yeah, yeah,
Because
yeah. And that way you can
miscommunication,
check. You can
yeah,
check and corroborate
yeah.
if you understood it in the way it was meant to come across.
Yeah, and the other part is too that I agree that we can disagree. We don't have to have the same opinion. You can have yours, I can have mine, and we can agree to disagree, which is so funny because one of my neighbors here, he never could do that. So we would have arguments, and he would storm out, and he has to win. Like so, he would be very aggressive, and I said, I hear you, I hear what you're saying, but I don't agree, and we can agree to disagree. He says, no, I have to win.
Yeah, 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 yeah. Well, what he really wants to hear is, oh, that's an interesting point of view. Now,
I'm
if you would have
promise for
said
that.
that, if you would have said that, it would have been a different, you know. But obviously, when he was growing up, nobody ever listened to him.
I don't know. I don't know his
I
background.
do know. I do know. They usually never listened to him and didn't
Yeah.
take him serious. And now he's older and he's adapted his whole behavior to that one,
I
again,
yeah,
pre-verbal
either that
decision he made.
or even feeling helpless because I find a lot of people who feel helpless have to win
Yeah,
because
yeah,
they have to install themselves as the person who is in charge
yeah,
because of their
yeah,
helplessness, right? And
right,
it's
yeah,
kind of sad because there's so much more going on when you start communicating the right way and understanding that somebody comes from a different platform, a different level, or that you don't have to be at the same level, but you can still understand where they're coming from.
yeah,
Right.
yeah.
Yeah. Yes. Lots of topics.
Yeah.
Do you have one quick tip for somebody who is in stress and burnout, who needs a something to get to pull himself out of the funk? What would you suggest?
Well, my advice is to seek professional help,
Get the support system going.
you know, and don't take the well-meant advice of people around you that don't know
Hmm.
really what they're doing. They mean well,
Hmm.
but you really need to, because I say the moment, I don't even think that is a burnout is actually bad. The burnout might have just well saved your life. If you would have continued on that path,
Mm.
it could have gotten so bad that you would have ended up in the hospital. So it's the moment where everything breaks down. And from a shamanic point of view, that is great. Why? Because now you can pick up all the puzzle pieces, you know, and reconstruct your whole life on a new foundation of
Mm.
a better understanding of who you are and what you would like in your life and forge that new path. So it's very symbolic. A breakdown is a moment that everything breaks down of everything that just doesn't serve you anymore.
The neat thing, and like, and again, a breakdown is never something bad per se. It's chaos in the moment and it's fright at the moment. But on the other hand, it opens all opportunities and possibilities, and
Yeah,
it clears the field to start something new,
exactly.
right? And opens the
Yeah,
field for growth again, instead of being caught in that place where you're at.
yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah, no,
So
I agree
in that
completely
sense,
with you.
but then it's good, you see, if you have a professional there with you, he can help you put things into perspective and make it so much easier for you to be able to handle, you know, this overwhelming load that is just, you know, weighing down on you.
Yeah.
And you have a feeling that your whole life is turned upside down, really. It
Perspective is
to,
such a finicky thing when you're stuck in your box.
yeah,
Because how often can't we see over the plate, or like platitude, but over the plate, and in do you know that German saying über den Teller hinüberschauen? Über den
yeah, yeah,
Teller
you didn't
anschauen.
tell.
Yeah, so you're looking over the
Look over
borders
the
of your
plate.
plate.
I like that,
Yes.
yeah.
Which is a really neat saying because it means you don't just see what's in front of you, you see also what's around that. And
Yeah,
you get to the point where you see more than just what's holding you back, right? You also see the things that drive you forward, the things that are great in your life. And shifting perspective is one of the best things that you can do. Just when you're stuck in a situation, just turn it around and look from the other side, right?
Yeah. You
Yeah,
know,
so
just one experience that I want to share. I was in my first year of college, and I had a terrible breakup with my girlfriend, and I was devastated. I was so devastated. And one of my really good friends from high school, he, I went from studious and being really great at at college, and yeah, having a great social life. I went from this to that. I was deceived by my best friend. My girlfriend cheated with one of my best friend's best friends. And I ended up in the nightlife, becoming a DJ and, living from day to night. And I dropped out of college. Wonderful. Anyway, long story short, this friend said, Robert, why don't you just come and stay at my place? No questions asked. Just come so you have somebody around, that you're not alone. And I took him up on that offer. And you know something? Still today, it would be a really great practice if you could offer that to people, because it isn't always about figuring it all out and digging into the past. It helped me so much. No questions were asked, and I was just able to be there in the presence of this friend of mine with his mom and just sit
Mhm.
it out, until I just came out of the sadness and the depression by myself. It was really
Judgment-free
wonderful.
zone is a really cool place when you can offer that to somebody that
Yeah, yeah.
just, and that's basically the practice that Richard talks about so often, holding the space. Um, I find,
Richard Morton.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's one of the practices that I learned through therapeutic touch, and I never understood it really until I really dove into the burnout work because
Ah, okay.
if you offer somebody a space energetically, which is holding the space. So you're creating the space for them to be what they are without having any expectations, without judging, without
Exactly.
wanting. You're just there energetically and you make the offer of, if you need me, I'm here. And
Exactly.
that's the
Without
biggest gift.
without fixing them.
Yeah. It's the
Yeah.
biggest gift you can give somebody, and it's the easiest way for somebody else to start the healing process because they can be what they need to be at that moment,
Uh,
right? And I have had in my work life, I have had suicidal people, depression, anxiety, PTSD, everything mental. Because in 2014, I realized that I have with the burnout a mental health issue, so I can relate to what's going on. And I knew from myself, every time you put me in that box again and had expectations on me that I had to be a certain way, I could not be that way. And that's when I started to work with mental health issues, not issues, challenges. There's no
right.
issues, it's
Right. Right.
challenges, and just offered the help, and people come, and that's what happens to me. Like I'm somewhere, and next thing I have somebody telling me their life story just because I'm there holding the space for them, and they need
Exactly.
somebody to talk to, and it's
Yeah.
okay because it's not my story, and I can let it go. I'm never taking anything that's theirs with me. I'm making mine. Right.
When you talk about mental health challenges, are you talking about people with diagnosed with like bipolar?
Not even
Or,
diagnosed, but everybody has mental health challenges, basically.
okay. Okay. So just general. We're not
If you
talking
go
about.
into non-trust and sorry, into the way that the brain tries to keep you in a safe space. Give me
Oh, take your time.
Ugh, too dry in here. So yeah, all of that.
So, but you're not talking about people that may have like manic depression or
Not even
di
diagnosed. Like
Okay, okay.
most people just come and say, some of them are diagnosed, but I find a lot of people come these days with anxiety and depression. Just never diagnosed, never seen any
Right,
specialist.
okay, okay. Yeah.
Ugh. That's me. So, before I cough more, I know we have more to talk about. I think I'm gonna cut it short here.
That was
Ah, it's the sign. That's the sign of my body saying I don't want to talk anymore. No, that's quite often with me. Sorry. Either the air is too dry or whatever. We have to dive into that, but we do that privately. How about that?
Yes. Yeah.
Thank you so much for coming.
Yeah.
I will post underneath the
Thank
video,
you.
I will have all your information if anybody's drawn to you or resonates with you and wants to dive deeper into work or learn more about you. And
Okay. Wonderful.
I love to have you here, and I'm happy that I got over my trigger and had you here and had a great conversation with you. Thank you,
Thank
Robert.
you. Thank you so much, Natasha.
And I'll see you soon.
Yes. All right.